Hello and welcome to another video, and today we're going to go on a road trip to the Brunswick area, which is close to Hanover in Germany, to install another dash cam. So once again we go to Germany for a dash cam. It's crazy, but yeah, it's another opportunity to do a nice road trip, and this time I'm going to be testing the Scan My Tesla app. So I borrowed my wife's phone, and well, it's an old phone, she doesn't use it anymore, but I'm hoping to get some data from this particular trip and see what is what. So we are en route, and one thing I noticed in actually the past update, and I noticed that when I did the heart rate retest for the first time, is that the car is not moving over anymore for passing trucks and vans and that kind of stuff. Only when there's not enough room and they're driving really on the edge of the lane, then it moves over, which is good. That's the way that I can appreciate that. But if there was enough room and the car was moving over and trucks were driving like 50 meters from each other, you would get this weave in, weave out thing, and it made passengers complain about it as well, and I didn't like it either. So that's good that Tesla listened to us and yeah, optimized it basically. So if it's not necessary, it's not necessary to move over. Now I'm also going to ignore the navigation, because the navigation here is telling me to go charge at Moers, but I will be arriving with 47% charge left, which is just way too much. The idea is normally it will go to Moers, Lauenau, and then Hanover, passing Hanover into Brunswick. But I'm going to take another route just because, well, I haven't driven that route before, and get some nice scenery. Hopefully the weather stays like this, so I can also put the drone in the air and get some nice shots there. But the idea is to go to Kamen for the first supercharger, which is about 300 kilometers, so that's perfectly doable, and I might even get to enjoy the Autobahn a little bit. Now, something interesting I also noticed already via the Scan My Tesla app is that you can monitor the torque split between the front and back. And there, when I'm cruising like I'm doing now, you clearly see that the back motor is just idling, basically. It's not providing any torque. But when I hit the accelerator, then immediately it starts providing the necessary torque as well. So yeah, Tesla always said that that was happening, and now we got the proof that that is actually happening, which is cool to see. So something else I've noticed is that the trip estimator is overly cautious as well. I've changed my destination to the Kamen supercharger now instead of my end destination, because I'm taking a detour from the original route. So this is one case where a waypoint could have been useful. But anyway, I just set the supercharger as my destination, as I'll be having lunch there anyway. Now, the trip estimator, it estimated that I was going to arrive there with 12%, which means that I wouldn't be able to enjoy the Autobahn much. But I've been driving on that for about 15 minutes and now I already have 20% left. What's this guy doing? So I'm doing 120, the guy is passing me and I was going to drive 110. Anyways, so yeah, going to pass this guy again. Oh really? I guess he wants to play. But yeah, traffic does not allow us to play, so I'll take it easy and just let him be. But anyway, so I'm getting 21% right now already. That means that I'll be enjoying the Autobahn a little bit and maybe find a spot along the way also to take the drone up and get some good shots. The weather seems to be okay for that. I just need to make sure that I'm in an area where I can legally fly, and there's something interesting to see as well. Yeah, right again. So this is the weird section on the Autobahn where we have some weight control. So if I'm overweight, then I guess I'll find out here. But all kidding aside, so this is really weird because it's always a traffic jam before this. And for some reason it's not while entering Germany. It's, yeah, like almost 100 kilometers inside of Germany that we suddenly get this weight limit control. Maybe it's for that bridge up ahead, I don't know, but I always found it funny that this is actually happening here. So I've just checked the cell temperature of the battery, and the average temperature at the moment is 41.3 degrees Celsius. Now I don't know what the actual optimal charging temperature is, but I have about 50 kilometers left to go until we reach the supercharger, and I'm curious to see whether the car will still preheat the battery a little bit. Yes or no? It's this high already because I've been driving 160 to 180 for a good stretch now. So yeah, we'll see if the BMS will still do something with the cell temperature to get an optimal charge rate. So I finally made it to the common supercharger, and as you can see, I'm parked at a temporary stall and every other one is currently being occupied, so it's really busy. But even though even though it's busy, I'm getting 70 kilowatts at the moment, so I'm guessing the Model 3 next to me is close to done charging. So far we've driven 300 kilometers at an average consumption of 219 watt hours per kilometer, which is pretty good considering the fact that it's only about 8 degrees outside, and I've driven a few stretches of 160 and 180 on the Autobahn. Also during that driving on the Autobahn, the 180, the temperature of the cells got up to about 45, 46, so like 45.8 I believe, degrees Celsius. Right now it's 43.8. So by driving on the Autobahn at higher speeds, you already have enough preheating in the battery that the system does not need to preheat to get the optimal charge rate. Might be different with the better cooling of the Model 3, but for my Model S, this is what is happening, and yeah, it just puts enough heat driving fast. So now I really need to get some lunch because I'm really hungry. I've been driving for 3.5 hours. I did make a 20-minute stop to put the drone in the air a little bit, hoping to do that this afternoon as well on my route. The direct route says 255 kilometers, but I'm taking a slightly longer route, so it will be closer to 320 kilometers still to go. That's about 4 hours, I think, so I'm counting on 4.5, maybe 5 hours if I take another charge to be sure, because I'm not sure whether or not I can charge at the hotel. But first, lunch. Okay, Tesla, here's another feature request. When in Germany, you are obligated to do the Rettungsgangstrasse, something like that. My German is not that good, but I should move over to the side, not drive in the center of the lane, so that the emergency vehicles, they can just drive through it, through the traffic jam, to clear it up as soon as possible. So this is something that I think is easily achieved, to say, okay, below a certain speed, you just hug the left lane marker or the left side of the road instead of staying in the center of the lane. Tesla is already doing this for the automatic exit taking. It starts hugging that right side and that right lane marker, so they could easily do the left one as well. So Tesla, if you're watching, this is a nice feature request. I think a lot of Tesla drivers will appreciate. Also, when in traffic jam, for the bikes and motorcycles that do lane splitting, it's a lot safer for them as well. Now that was a small detour, but I managed to get some cool shots, I think. It was a very nice scenery with that bridge, and on the other side you have that little town further up ahead and the fields on the other direction. So yeah, cool place. Now let's get on to Kassel. I was supposed to charge at the Lutherberg supercharger, but the navigation tells me that I will be arriving with 30% at that location. It's a little bit too much. Now I'm going to try to get in one go to Ruden, and the navigation currently tells me I will arrive there with 10%. So given the fact that the navigation is often wrong and too cautious, as I mentioned before, I think I'm fine to get there, and that will be around 5:30, something like that, depending on traffic, of course. Then one more charge, and then about 30-40 kilometers, I think, to my destination for tonight. Now it's always fun to go to a supercharger that you've never been to, because then you have to look for the supercharger actually. And I think I've passed it. So it's always fun to see. Let's see here and go all the way to the back. Yes. There it is, and it looks like I'll be the only one. So I'm kind of curious to see what kind of speeds I am going to get. Now, something else I've learned from using the app is that there's also a setting called BMS Max Charge, which is the maximum charging capacity that your battery can handle. So let me show you. It's the bottom left one on the screen, right? And that is currently at 103 kilowatts, and I'm having 102 at the moment on the screen. Now, as your battery gets colder, I'm standing here like for 5 minutes already, but if your battery is cold or the state of charge is really low, then like when I arrived here, then it actually displayed I was only able to take like 75, and when heat gets into the battery, that number goes up, so that regulates how much charge you can actually take from the supercharger. The numbers I've seen so far, the maximum is 108. That was when the battery was charging properly at the previous supercharger. And that is consistent with what I've been told by Tesla, and what I found out in the previous video also by using the app here. That is that my supercharging is limited to 108 kilowatts. So I'll never be able to go above that ever anymore with this car. So yeah, I can really recommend this app if you want to get into the technical nitty-gritty details of what is happening with your battery, how much power the front motor is taking, how much power the rear motor is taking, and so on. The cell temperature, the imbalance in the car, which is virtually non-existing, right? Because there's a big difference between your battery being unbalanced and the battery not being calibrated properly. So some people confuse that, and they say, well, if you charge between 50 and 70% or 40 and 70% all the time, then your battery becomes unbalanced, right? I've made that mistake before as well. What we actually mean is that the cells are always at the same voltage, so that's what the balancing is all about. Is like a very tiny difference between the different cells. The problem is that the battery in that case doesn't quite know where 100% is or where 0 is exactly. Well, 0 is 0 because then it's depleted, but it doesn't quite know when it's full anymore, and your range calculations can be off, because it's very hard to measure the capacity of a battery. You can only measure what you're pulling out of the battery. So, and then with some heat losses and everything, what you put into the battery is not exactly the same as what comes out of your socket. So that's the imbalance part versus the calibration part. So with that out of the way, I'm going to grab something to eat again. It's close to 5:40. I'll be here for another 40-45 minutes, and then I have a half hour to drive until my final destination for tonight.